Hello friends and fellow book lovers. Happy New Year to everybody. It has been a while since I posted a video in this channel, mainly because of the end of the year workload. I was not able to find the time to post a video here, and I apologize for that. So I just wanted to start this year with a summary of the books that I read in 2024. So total I read 135 books in 2024, and out of that 25 are in my mother tongue language, Tamil, and then the rest of the 110 were all the books written in English. And I read both nonfiction and fiction equally. So what I wanted to do today in this video is to really talk about the top 10 of the nonfictions that I really liked, and also top 10 of the fictions that I really liked out of all the books I read. And also I just wanted to quickly mention some of the graphic format books that I really liked this year. And if I talk about all the 110 books, it will be a very long video, so I don't want to do that. So the intention is to just show you guys the books that I really liked. And what I've done at the end of this video is like a very quick slideshow of all the 110 books that I read. And if anybody is interested, you guys can just take a look at it and get the information by looking at that slideshow. So without further ado, I just wanted to start the video with the top 10 fiction books that I really liked. And the order in which I'm going to talk about this book is not necessarily the rating or how much I liked top 10 books. It's just the order that I really read in 2024. So, and also I did reread a lot of the books when it comes to fiction this year, and predominantly a lot of Russian literature. So you will be hearing a lot of those in this list. So the first book that I really liked was Dostoevsky's White Nights. It's a very small book, and it's a classic, all-time classic, and a lot of people would have read that book. And I reread it after several years, and I still really liked it. So that's the first book that I read that I liked in fiction category. And then the second one is Fathers and Sons. Again, it's a Russian author, Ivan Turgenev, which is again a classic, and a lot of people would have read that. And the third book is a graphic format book. Did you hear what Eddie Gein done? So I really like this illustration on this book, and also it's like a murder mystery, solving a murder in a small Midwest US town. So this is the first book, graphic format book that I liked last year. And then the fourth book it's a very small book, and it's a very profound book, in my opinion. The One Who Walks Away from Omelas. So it's a very small book. And then the fifth book is I Am Legend. So a lot of people would have watched the movie, but when I read the book, I realized that it's a little different than the movie, which I really liked. And also, I'm a big fan of the horror genre. So it was in my list for a very long time, so I really enjoyed reading this book. And then the sixth book is, again, it's a Russian literature written by Leo Tolstoy. It's The Death of Ivan Ilyich. So even Akira Kurosawa has made a movie, Ikuru, based on this, the story. So it's again a classic. And the next book is written by an Indian author. There is Gunpowder in the Air. It's a book about the people who are in a jail in West Bengal, and some of the inmates are Naxalites, who are like a left-wing militant group who were imprisoned there. And the story happens within the compounds of the jail. And it was a fantastic book. I really liked it. And then the next one, again, this is another classic, but I read it in a graphic format instead of the actual book. I actually have read the book as well. It's the Road. And everybody knows about this book, and the movie is also great. But I personally think this graphic format of this book is much better than the actual book and also the movie. It was beautifully illustrated, and it really showed the dystopian, dark and gloomy mood and the theme with the illustrations. So I absolutely loved this book. The next book is, I've been meaning to read Emile Zola's the 25 books that he read, like a series. But after asking in a lot of forums, people said you don't really have to read them in the order in which it came out. So they recommended that I start with this book. It's I hope I pronounced this right. La Sommeur. That's the book that I read, and I really liked it. This is the first Emile Zola's book that I read, and it's about the effects of alcoholism in the blue collar job or the working class in you know in France back in 1800s. So another classic. I highly recommend this book if you haven't tried Emile Zola's books yet. And then the next one is Inferno. Again, Dante's Inferno, everybody knows, but I'm not a big fan of reading poems. So instead, I picked this up because it's in graphic format. So any book that is very difficult to read, or if it's not my taste, but still it's a classic, I try to find the graphic format of this the same book. And so far, I've read so many, and I really like reading. Like for example, the Odyssey and the Iliad. I read the graphic format, which I really liked. So in that category, Inferno, Dante's Inferno, this particular book is very beautifully illustrated. Again, it's almost very similar to the woodcut cravings of Gustave. It's much easier to read this format, so I really liked it. And then the last book is Leo Africanus. So again, this is a historical fiction based on the real person who lived during the medieval time in southern Spain and northern Africa, Maghreb, and also uh, Granada, and Caliphate of Cordoba. So this person's journey during all these major occurrences in the medieval time, both in southern Spain and also the northern Africa. So it's a very interesting read. If you haven't tried this book, I really recommend this book. So that's the top 10 fiction books that I really liked this year. Now moving on to the non-fiction category, the very first book that I read was Beyond the Wall. So if you really want to learn the history of East Germany without any bias, I strongly recommend this book. It really talks about the entire uh, the span of its existence of East Germany. So the conception right after the World War II to the end, the coming down of the wall. So I really recommend this book. The next book I read was the Butchering Art. So this probably I would categorize this as a medical micro history book. So this talks about one person who was very instrumental in understanding the infection that's happening in the surgery rooms in Victorian era, and how he made a huge difference in the mortality rate after the surgery, because it was really bad back then. And this book was really very informative, and which talks about how the medical field evolved just because of this person in the Victorian era. And then the next book is, actually, I recommended this book to a lot of our friends. And then this was recommended to me by one of my book buddy. So, How to Argue with a Racist. I found this book really very informative. It really breaks the grand narrative of superiority, and how certain groups of people are superior. You can see that all across the world. It's not just in certain areas like racism in the United States, or you see them in India as well, in the casteism. So this is a must read for anybody who really wants to know the scientific backing for breaking that grand narrative of superiority. So I strongly recommend this book. And then the next book that I read is the Jakarta Method. So this is a very unknown history, and for me, so when I read this book, I kind of understood how Cold War uh, has a lot of backstories, and this is one of them. And it's the persecution of left ideology people in Indonesia. And this was really not very much talked about history, and I think everybody should read this book. So the next book is the Ashoka. So this is a very comprehensive book if you really want to know the life of Ashoka and all the events that surrounds his during his reign in northern India. and I absolutely loved this book. It's full of unknown information, even for a person from India who has known Ashoka, but not to this level. So I really recommend this book. And then the next one is The Wager. Wager, you guys already probably know the author of this book is the same guy who wrote the book The Killers of the Flower Moon, which is another fantastic book, and also the movie is really great. But this is another completely different genre that he wrote, which I really like. It's about naval exploration, and naval missions during the medieval, not the medieval, the 1800s. So this book talks about the journey of this one particular British ship, naval ship, that tries to cross the Cape Horn in Patagonia to go and engage the Spanish Armada, and how they get shipwrecked and then got marooned in islands, and how the people get out of that situation. It's a really good book that I really enjoyed. And then the next book is The Last Island. So people from India, we already all of us know that there is a group of indigenous people living in the Andaman chain of islands in Andaman, and so majority of them have been already contacted, the Jaravas. But this particular island, it's called the North Sentinel Island, and the people who are living there are Sentinelese. They call them because that's the name we gave them. But mm, in the history of humanity, nobody in the recent years had made contact with this tribe, and they're very hostile to anybody who tries to make contact with them. And this book is long overdue, in my opinion, because there are not very many books to talk about this. So this book really talks about the people who live there. But again, to my disappointment, it's not much information. But again, it gave more information that I already knew. So I recommend this book if you're interested in reading about uncontacted tribes in the world, like in Amazon, or this is probably the last group of people that are not contacted by outside world, like in Papua New Guinea or Amazon. The next book is the Misquoting Jesus. So this is again a very controversial book, I think, but I really like the book because it doesn't talk about the belief element of Bible, but it talks about how Bible came into existence. What was the all the steps, and who wrote it. It kind of breaks all the myth of a lot of things, all the gospels and everything. So I really like this book, and I recommended this to some of my friends as well. And then the next book is The Hot Zone. This is a completely unknown story for me, that like Ebola virus came to the shores of the United States back in the 80s. And this talks about that story, how it came inside and how it got contained by, the with the help of the the military and then the CDC. And it reads like actually a fiction, and also you can see a lot of parallels to the movie The Outbreak. So this is another fantastic read. And then the next book I read was the Beast, No Beast So Fierce. So I have a liking for wildlife, and especially when it comes to man eaters in India. I've read a lot of books about the tigers and leopards that kill so many people, and also I have read books about the man eaters of Zavo in Africa, in Kenya, and there are movies that came out, Ghost in the Darkness, and you guys probably know this, but this is a very unknown, incident that I unknown to me, which talks about one single tiger which killed so many people in northern part of India and Nepal border. And it was a fantastic read. And what I really liked about this book is he talks about the evolution of tigers in the first 2 or 3 chapters, which was seldom talked, in my opinion. And then the next book is 1491. Again, this is a lot of people recommended this to me, and I read this. It's a very fantastic book. So 1491 really talks about the pre-Columbian Americans, all the way from Northern America to the tip of Southern America. How it really breaks that grand narrative, or it talks about how we got everything wrong, the stereotype of looking at or thinking about those people as hunter gatherers predominantly. And the author he says it's not the case, and most of them were very advanced for that time. So that's again, it's a very fantastic book, and I really liked it. And the last one I read last year and I really liked was the Manhunt. So this really talks about the 12 days of the manhunt for John Wilkes Booth, who was the assassin of President Abraham Lincoln. So this really read like a true crime, fiction book, a true crime book or a crime fiction. So I couldn't put it down. So this was really a fantastic book that I really enjoyed. So those are the books that I liked in 2024, and I do have a reading list for 2025, and I'll share that with you guys. And I hope that you guys like this review or introduction. If you liked it, leave comments below, and also if you have any questions, leave a comment below. I hope to see you guys in another interesting video. See you guys. Bye bye.